I never imagined that a gift from my husband would turn into the first thread that unraveled our entire marriage. It was our 7th wedding anniversary, and things between Erin and me had been distant. Not hostile, not broken, just distant. Like we were roommates sharing responsibilities, bills, and space. I wasn't expecting a gift. In fact, I hadn't even bought him anything besides a card and a homemade dinner. But that evening, he walked in with a sleek little bag from a premium electronics store. Inside was a brand new phone, the latest model, far more expensive than anything I would have chosen for myself. I remember looking up at him in surprise. "You got this for me?" He smiled, shrugged like it was no big deal. "You've been using that cracked phone for over a year." Figured it was time. At first, I felt touched. Maybe this was his way of showing me he still cared. Maybe we were starting a new chapter. I hugged him, genuinely thankful, and spent the evening transferring my apps and data over. But weirdly, when I opened the phone, everything was already there: photos, contacts, even my bank apps, all pre-installed. I thought maybe he had just helped with the setup to save me time. Still, it made me feel oddly watched. I didn't say anything, though. I didn't want to ruin the moment. The following week, little things started happening. My phone would light up randomly, even when I wasn't using it. Once or twice, it vibrated in the middle of the night with no notifications. I chalked it up to background updates or the dozens of apps syncing in the background. But then, new apps I didn't recall installing would pop up, and sometimes they'd vanish the next day like they were never there. I asked Aaron once about an unfamiliar icon, and he laughed it off. "Oh, probably just a system thing. Phones come bloated with junk nowadays." He always had a reasonable explanation. Always calm. Reassuring. But then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, I received a text from my bank. It read, "Your password was successfully changed. If this wasn't you, contact us immediately." My heart dropped. I hadn't made any changes. I tried logging into my account, but I was locked out. I could barely breathe. I immediately called the bank, went through their exhausting verification process, and finally got access again. That's when I saw it. My stomach twisted. Thousands of dollars had been transferred from my savings into another account. Not once, not twice, but 5 different transactions. The name of the recipient wasn't one I recognized. I asked the rep for more details, but all she could tell me was that it was an external account and the transactions were authorized through my app. I hung up the call and just sat there, frozen. Aaron came home an hour later, kissed me on the forehead, and asked what I wanted for dinner. I stared at him in disbelief, feeling like I didn't know the man standing in front of me. My instincts screamed that something wasn't right. I thought back to the phone, the pre-installed apps, the weird activity, the fact that everything had already been transferred over before I touched it. I didn't say anything to him that night. Instead, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently. I needed answers, but more importantly, I needed proof. I was no longer just suspicious. I was scared. That was the moment I decided to dig deeper, and what I found would blow everything wide open. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bank app screen flashing in my mind, the negative balance, the unfamiliar transactions, and the empty savings account I had worked so hard to build. That money wasn't just a number. It was my security. It was years of overtime shifts, birthday checks I never spent, and quiet sacrifices like skipping vacations so we could save for the future. I felt like someone had just ripped that future out of my hands. Aaron was already in the kitchen, whistling while making coffee, as if nothing was wrong. I watched him closely. How could he be so calm? So normal? The man I married had always been charming, even when he was hiding something. I couldn't confront him yet. Not without solid proof. Not without knowing for sure. So, I played the part. I kissed his cheek, thanked him for the coffee, and pretended to scroll on my phone while he read the newspaper. But inside, I was boiling. I called my bank again and asked for every detail they could give me. The transfers had been made from my mobile banking app. They were authenticated using my fingerprint, something that didn't make sense unless someone else had my phone in their hands. Or unless someone had remote access. The representative couldn't tell me where the money had gone exactly, just that it went into a checking account registered under a different name. They couldn't release more without a court order. That night, after Aaron went to bed, I drove across town to see someone I trusted, Ethan, an old friend from college who now worked in digital forensics and mobile security. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but he responded right away when I said it was urgent. I handed him my phone and told him everything, every suspicion, every weird notification, and the missing money. He raised an eyebrow. "Do you mind if I do a full scan on this? Like, deep scan?" "Please," I said. "I need to know what's on there." It took about an hour. I sat in silence while Ethan typed, clicked, and ran diagnostics. I stared at the dim blue light from his laptop and tried not to cry. He finally looked up and said something that made my blood run cold. "There's a monitoring app buried in here. It's disguised to look like a system file. It's not something the average person would notice. It records everything, keystrokes, screen activity, even microphone input. It's definitely not part of any normal phone setup." I felt sick. My chest tightened like I couldn't breathe. "How long has it been running?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned the screen toward me. "Since the day you got the phone. The same night your husband gave it to you." I didn't want to believe it. I wanted there to be some other explanation, some mix-up, a hack, anything. But the evidence was staring back at me. My phone, the device I used to access my accounts, message my friends, even write my journal, had been turned into a weapon. And my own husband was the one who had loaded the bullets. Ethan dug deeper and found that the app was transmitting data to a private server. The IP address was based in our city. That made things even clearer. "Whoever did this had access to your phone before you ever used it," Ethan said. "It's not just random spyware. It's targeted." I felt a wave of betrayal crash over me. How long had Aaron been planning this? Did he look at me every day, pretending to love me, while secretly spying on my every move? And for what? Money? The woman who walked into Ethan's apartment that night was scared and confused. The one walking out was angry and determined. I wasn't going to confront Aaron with just feelings and suspicions. I was going to catch him red-handed. I wanted him to know exactly who he was messing with. Because this time, he picked the wrong woman to manipulate. The next few days felt like an endless stretch of time. The house was eerily quiet, the usual hum of conversation and laughter replaced by an uncomfortable tension that hung in the air. I had to be careful, every move, every word had to be calculated. If Aaron suspected that I was onto him, he might get defensive, and I wasn't ready for a confrontation just yet. I needed more proof, something undeniable, something that would make him break. I spent hours at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, pretending to look busy, but my mind was a whirlwind. I knew something was off. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how meticulously Aaron had planned his actions. He had been so careful, so deliberate. He knew I was savvy with money, that I kept a close eye on my accounts, so he had to be extra clever. It dawned on me that this wasn't just about stealing from me, it was about control. If he could get access to my financial life, if he could monitor my every move, he would always have the upper hand. It was then that I remembered something small but important. Every time Aaron and I went out, every time he used my phone to look up a restaurant or a map, I noticed a strange pattern. He would never let me have the phone for too long. He would always hover nearby, as if keeping watch over something important. That odd behavior, which I had dismissed as him just being protective, now seemed more like a precaution. He knew, deep down, that if I ever got curious, if I ever dug deep enough, I would find the hidden app. I didn't waste time. That night, while Aaron was in the shower, I took my phone to the bathroom with me, where I could finally be alone and uninterrupted. My heart raced as I connected my phone to the laptop Ethan had loaned me for this very purpose. I had to act quickly. Every second I wasted made it easier for Aaron to cover his tracks. Ethan's program scanned the phone's system deeply, looking for any traces of hidden files, apps, or programs. My hands shook as I clicked through the results. Then, the scan highlighted something that made my blood run cold, a file labeled System Update. The name was innocuous enough to slip past most people, but I had learned enough by now to know this was no ordinary system file. I clicked on it. Immediately, my screen flooded with dozens of lines of code, most of which I couldn't understand. But there it was, buried in plain sight, a string of code that matched the digital signature of the monitoring app Ethan had warned me about. It was there, hidden in the background, watching, recording, and sending everything to an unknown server. The app had been running for months, since the day Aaron had given me the phone, in fact. It was no coincidence. He had planned this from the start, methodically setting up his surveillance to capture every detail of my life. The realization hit me hard. I had been living in a house with a stranger, a man who wasn't just my husband but someone who had invaded the deepest parts of my privacy. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no denying it now. This wasn't just an accident or a misunderstanding. Aaron had deliberately betrayed me, and I had the proof. But what now? I wasn't sure what to do next. The emotional weight of the discovery threatened to crush me, but I had come too far to back down now. I couldn't confront him yet. I had to be smarter than that. If I was going to expose him, I needed to be tactical. I couldn't let him know that I had discovered his secret, at least not until I had everything in place. I took screenshots of the app, saved the data on a secure cloud drive, and made sure I had backups of everything. My next move was clear. I would need to consult with a lawyer. This wasn't just about the stolen money anymore, it was about the violation of my privacy, the control he had tried to exert over my life. For the first time in a long while, I felt a surge of determination. The person who had done this to me wasn't going to get away with it. I had been living in the dark for far too long, but now, I was in control. Aaron's game was over. Aaron thought he had me cornered. He thought his carefully orchestrated plan was foolproof, that I would never figure out what he was doing. But he made one critical mistake. He underestimated me. I didn't confront him right away. I played my part. I acted as if I hadn't seen the evidence, as if everything was still normal. I could see Aaron's behavior change slightly after the bank incident. He was more careful around me, a little too cautious. But he didn't know that I had already taken the necessary steps. I'd called the police, filed a report, and provided them with the evidence I had gathered, but I wasn't ready for them to act just yet. I had to give Aaron enough rope to hang himself. I started paying closer attention to his habits, looking for any small slip-ups. And sure enough, it didn't take long. One night, when I was lying in bed, pretending to sleep, I noticed Aaron on his laptop, glancing over at me every few seconds to make sure I wasn't awake. That's when I realized what he was doing. He was checking the same app he had secretly installed on my phone. He thought I hadn't noticed the notifications. He thought I wasn't aware of the tiny things he had left behind. But I had seen enough to know exactly what he was up to. My next move was simple yet powerful. I knew that if I could trace the IP address linked to his activity, I could catch him in the act. Ethan, the same friend I had turned to before, helped me set up a secure tracking program on my phone. It wasn't just about following Aaron's digital trail anymore, it was about turning the tables. The app that had been used to spy on me was still running in the background, collecting data every time I typed or swiped on my phone. But now, with Ethan's help, I was able to reverse the process. I traced the IP address back to Aaron's laptop. Every time the app connected to the server, it pinged his device. The same device that he'd been using when he thought I was too oblivious to notice. I smiled to myself. He thought he was controlling me, but in reality, he had handed me the most powerful weapon of all, proof. I set up a meeting with my lawyer, handed over all the information I had gathered, and filed for a restraining order. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about showing Aaron that I wasn't the woman he could deceive. I had the power to expose everything. I watched him closely as the days passed. He became more erratic, more defensive. He asked questions I could barely answer, like why I hadn't touched my phone in days or why I was always on the computer. But I never faltered. I gave him no reason to suspect that I was onto him. I knew the moment was coming when he would break, and I would be ready. The air in our house had become suffocating. Every moment felt like a carefully choreographed performance. I played my part perfectly, pretending nothing was wrong. Aaron went on with his life as if I hadn't uncovered his betrayal. But beneath the surface, the tension was unbearable. I could feel the weight of everything he had done pressing down on me. It was a Thursday when the moment finally came. The day had started like any other, with Aaron heading out early for work while I stayed home, still tracking the last few pieces of his trail. It was late afternoon when I got the call from the bank. They'd traced the final transfer, a large sum of money, to a private account registered under Aaron's name. Everything I had feared was now undeniable. This wasn't just about a few stolen dollars. This was about everything he had hidden from me. The same evening, Aaron returned home, his usual calm demeanor intact. But I could sense that he was nervous. He tried to make small talk, but I barely responded, too focused on the phone in my hand, the details of his betrayal unfolding before me. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice steady, but cold. "About the bank transfer, the one that went to that account." "Your account?" His eyes went wide for just a split second before he masked it with a tight smile. "What are you talking about?" "Don't act stupid," I shot back, the anger finally bubbling to the surface. "I know about the app. The one you installed on my phone. The one you used to monitor my every move. The one you used to drain my bank account." Aaron froze. His lips parted as if he was going to say something, but the words got caught in his throat. For the first time in months, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "You're crazy," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "That's not true. You're just imagining things." "No," I said, my voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "I've seen the proof. The app. The transactions. I know everything." He started pacing, his hands rubbing over his face. I could tell he was trying to think of an excuse, some way to turn the situation back on him. But there was no way out this time. The walls were closing in, and he knew it. "I did it because I was scared," he blurted out suddenly, the words tumbling out of his mouth in a desperate attempt to justify his actions. "I saw the way you were drifting away from me. I thought if I had access to your money, I could control things, make sure you wouldn't leave me. I didn't know what else to do. You were always so focused on your career, on your savings. You never saw me. You never saw how much I needed you." His voice cracked, but I didn't feel any sympathy. He had chosen this path. He had stolen from me, betrayed my trust, and manipulated me into believing I was crazy. Now, he wanted me to feel sorry for him? "I never stopped loving you," he continued, his voice quieter now. "I thought if I could get back on track, we could fix everything. We could fix us." The more he spoke, the more disgusted I felt. How had I ever been so blind? How could I have loved someone who was capable of this? His desperation was palpable, but I wasn't moved. "You're a liar, Aaron," I said, my voice firm. "You didn't do this because you loved me. You did it because you wanted control. You wanted power over me, over everything. And now it's all falling apart. This is over." His face twisted in anger, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out. But then, something changed. His shoulders slumped, the defiance draining from him like air escaping from a balloon. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought if I kept you close, kept you under control, everything would be okay. But now..." The silence between us stretched on for what felt like hours. I could feel the weight of his apology, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the years of lies, the betrayal, the financial manipulation. I reached for the phone in my hand and dialed the number I had been avoiding for weeks, my lawyer. The moment I spoke those words, "I need you to file for divorce," I could see the life drain from Aaron's face. He knew it was over. The next few days were a blur of legal paperwork, calls to the bank, and conversations I never thought I would have. But when it was all said and done, I had taken back control. I had exposed the man I thought I knew, and I was no longer the victim in this twisted game. Aaron was left with nothing but his lies and regrets. As for me, I was stronger than I had ever been. I had finally broken free.